Good afternoon. I'm Eric Maurice, a policy analyst at the EPC, and I'm happy to welcome you to this EPC Elections Monitor about the elections in the Netherlands. Last week, Dutch voters elected the members of the lower house of the parliament. The elections came only 2 years after the previous ones in 2023, because the government was brought down by the far-right PVV party led by Geert Wilders, only after 11 months earlier this year because of disagreement over the migration policy. The PVV was the winner of the 2023 elections and was the favorite this year, but it lost 7 points of percentage, a third of its votes, and 11 seats in the parliament. And this year, the winner was the centrist party D66, led by Rob Jetten, with just under 17% of the votes and 26 seats, as much as the PVV. And behind D66 and PVV, we can find the Liberal VVD party with 22 seats, the Alliance of Greens and Social Democrats of former EU Commissioner Frans Timmermans with 20 seats, and the Christian Democrats obtained 18 seats, and the right-wing JA21 or JA21, 9 seats. Overall, 15 parties will sit in the lower house in The Hague, and 4 or 5 parties will be necessary to form a governing coalition. Negotiations will take some time, and the outgoing Prime Minister, Dirk Schoof, will continue to lead a caretaker government. So, when will there be a new Dutch government, and what will it be its political orientation? Will D66 leader Rob Jetten be the next Prime Minister, and will he be able to bring the Netherlands closer to the EU, as he said he wanted to do? And what will Wilders do? And what will be the impact for the Netherlands and for the EU? To answer these questions and many others, we have 3 excellent speakers today. First, Ria Cats. You are defense and geopolitics reporter at the Het Financieele Dagblad, a daily newspaper in the Netherlands, and you are a former EU correspondent. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
We also have Sam van der Staak. You are Director for Regional Europe at Intrnational IDEA, the Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance. Good afternoon and welcome, and thank you for being there. And last but not least, my colleague Elisabeth Kuiper, Associate Director of the European Policy Center and Head of our Social Europe and Wellbeing Program.
Thanks, and good to see Ria and Sam.
We have 1 hour, and you, our audience today, will be able to ask your questions. Please write them in the Q&A space at the bottom of your screen, and I will pass them on to our speaker. Now, I will start with you, Elisabeth. 5 days after the election, what is the situation today? Have negotiations started already, officially or informally? And given the results, what, according to you, is the most likely coalition we can see, and how long will it take to form one coalition? And I will ask more or less the same questions to your colleague, but first, the floor is yours, Elisabeth.
Well, thanks so much, Eric. And as you said, it's been quite a process because I have actually been a volunteer in the polling station myself. And really from the moment I saw the first exit poll and I was counting the vote myself, I really could see, in equal measure, D66, so the social liberals, going up together with the Freedom Party. And I think as we speak, it's still not completely decided in the sense that votes are still coming in the sense that the Dutch votes abroad need to be counted. So whereas initially D66 was declared a winner, and then a few hours later, it seems that the Freedom Party went up, I think it's now fair to say that I think there's still a margin that the Freedom Party could become second in the way that then D66 could have an even additional seat. But otherwise, the fact that they remain at the same level, I think means that D66 no doubt will deliver the next Prime Minister. Because other political parties, the big political parties, have excluded working again with Wilders. And I'm sure that we're going to go into Wilders and the rather chaotic Schoof government that we have seen these past months. But I think as we see it now, and also knowing that tomorrow the chair of the parliament, together with the heads of the biggest parties, will come together and appoint an explorer that will then look into the options. And the options need to be presented to the Dutch parliament when it comes together for the first time in its new assembly. So the new assembly will come together on the 12th of November. So it will mean that we have more clarity. And I think a lot of people say that the clarity as we see it now means that we see two options, broadly speaking. I think, and I think from the start, I need to say neither of these options are very simple, because on the one hand, there seems to be an option with, of course, D66, the social liberals, together with the Christian Democrats, the liberals, so let's say Mark Rutte's party, because a lot of people know him, it's the VVD. But of course, then the question is, who will need to be the party that gets added to this mix in order to have a majority in the 150 seats the Dutch parliament has. And it could well be that indeed the Green Left Labour Party could be added to the mix. If not, were it for the fact that actually the VVD, the Liberals, have been excluding working with the Green Left Labour Party for quite some time. They really made this a point during the campaign. So even though this option would have an 86 seats majority, it is going to be very hard, because it would mean that two parties, where one of the parties have been excluded to work with the other, needs to find compromise. So we will go into why this has happened and on which topic this has happened. But that's one option. So broadly speaking, one of the options is more of a center coalition. Another option could be a more center-right coalition if you add to the mix of the parties that won the so-called GA21, so ja 21 as we say in Dutch, which is more also of a far-right party, which makes it, of course, equally challenging. If not for the fact that also this coalition would not have a majority, it's only have 75 votes. So it would mean that you have to have another party. And also, I think the makeup of this coalition in the Dutch Senate also is not an easy one. It's making it very hard to find majorities. So as we speak, again, it's still the counting the votes. So only on the 7th of November, we will know with 100% certainty what the outcome looks like. Tomorrow, we will have the process in the parliament, and we probably see an explorer coming from this so that we know more about the options. And I think, again, the question, is this a turning point or not for Dutch politics? It's something that I'm very keen to discuss also with Ria and Sam.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And yes, so I will ask Ria more or less the same question, not about the situation, but the likely coalitions, and also this complexity of needing so many parties. That's not new, of course, for the Netherlands, but we saw with the last government that it was almost too complex an equation to have a lasting government. So what could be the breaking topics, like the topics that could prevent any of the two possibilities to happen? And how strong is D66 in trying to impose its views on its possible partners, because they will need partners, and so they have to make concessions as well. So how do you see that happening, Ria, please?
Yeah, thanks for the question. To answer your question, we have to go back to the VVD, to the Dutch Liberals, Rutte's party. I think they're actually the kingmaker in this process, because whatever coalition you will choose, you need them. They lost the elections, they lost 2 seats, but still they are the kingmaker. And why? Because they are needed, and they have said, like Elizabeth said, we don't want to govern with Timmermans' party, with the Greens Labour Party. It's a merging party. So this is why they are kingmaker, because they say we want to govern with a central right party, which is Ja 21, JH21. Well, they are actually not really central right. They are quite a radical right, in my opinion. But still, the VVD wants them because they are afraid that if they will govern with Timmermans' party, they will be the ones who will get punished after the next elections. And we know because it has been a chaos in the Dutch politics for like 5 years now, that there will be elections very soon, probably national elections as well, because this is how it goes, unfortunately, the last years. But also there will be local elections already in March. So they are afraid that they will be that the voters will lose more voters when they compromise too much. That's about. On the other hand, it's also very interesting because they are still the second party in any coalition option. So they will be the ones who get the finance ministry, which is very interesting for them. Because, well, if you have the finance ministry, you can control where the money goes to. So that's what makes it very hard for Rob Jetten to be as progressive as he wants to be, because he needs the VVD. And they want to be with Ja21 with the radical rights. And he will lose the finance ministry, which is very important, as I said. So, this is really difficult. And we have this tradition in Dutch politics as well, that if you are the prime minister, to get the coalition, you need to compromise the most. So he needs to be the one who gives in the most, normally. And it's easier for him to compromise not as much as he wants to when he has this coalition with the Greens Labour Party. So that's really why he wants to do that. We have the two progressive parties, the Greens Labours and D66, and we have center-right parties, CDA, the Christian Democrats, and the VVD. That's easier for him, but well, as I said, VVD is kingmaker now, so actually they are the ones who are in control, even though they lost the elections. And they have a lot of experience. Since Rutte, they have been the ones who, kind of rule this country, so they know how to play the game.
Thank you, Ria. That's very interesting points, and that leads me to the questions I would ask to Sam, because what you said about D66 being obliged, or the main party being obliged to compromise the most, it's when you look at the coalition possibilities, it's one center-left party confronted with right-wing parties, and of course the question of the Greens and Social Democrats is it's not strong if VVD doesn't want them. So that would be my first questions to you, Sam. How can Rob Jetten find an agreement with three right-wing parties, including GA or Ja21, which is most of the right? How can he do that? And the second question for a non-Dutch audience, including me, D66 and VVD are in the same Renew group in the European Parliament, of the same European party, ALDE. But what is different between D66 and VVD? We hear that one is center-left, the other one is more liberal, but they are in the same European party. So what is the dynamics between these two parties? Because we understand their relationship will be very important in the negotiations.
Right. Thank you, Eric, and thank you to the other two panelists for very good introductions. One thing I'd like to add on the next couple of days is that we haven't seen Wilders concede to his defeat or not being the biggest. In fact, over the past 48 hours, he said that there have been signs of vote rigging. I wouldn't take it too seriously, but I also don't want to dismiss it because, as we've seen in many other countries, this has become the playbook of populists. So what would happen if on Friday, indeed, the Electoral Council announces the results and Wilders sticks to his guns and says, we don't accept that this is the result? It's a slight chance, but we go by the tweets that he is sending, and this is what he has alluded to.
And if he does that, do you think it could derail the process, disrupt the democratic proceeding, or would it be just noise making it more difficult and polarizing the public opinion more?
Well, it would be a first for the Netherlands to have a party openly denouncing the results as called by the Electoral Council. So nobody knows what would happen. Of course, it would be an enormous dent. to the credibility of the electoral system and Dutch democracy. What it would lead to, nobody knows, but Mr. Wilders has a significant following. Those people take his tweets very seriously. In the short run, I think it's important that he still hasn't conceded, because, as was explained by the other two speakers, the process has already started of finding what is called an explorer or a scout that is looking into possible coalitions. That can only happen if all parties agree to that process. And if there's one party, which is the second biggest party, that is still claiming that it hasn't lost, or it may still be the winner of the election, it may affect that process that is unfolding in parallel. So there's a couple of sort of ifs and buts to the process that we'll see over the next couple of days that has everything to do with Mr. Wilders and his doubting the electoral process as such. What it will lead to, we're yet to see, because it would be completely new to the Dutch democratic system.
And yeah, so that's very interesting, because as you said, it happened in the US, and probably it will happen in other EU countries. So what happens here could be announcing other issues in domestic policies. But coming back to my question on VVD and D66 and how the relation can affect the negotiations, what would be your take on that? Is it complicated, or can it be simple?
Well, I think, as the others have said, the outcome of this election is really much about stability of voters having said, we want to do away with the experiments that we've had over the past 2 years of new parties with quite populist policies. We want to go back to the parties that have been around for decades. The good thing about that is that those are also parties who know how to compromise, how to negotiate, how to give and take, how to govern. I suspect that between D66 and VVD, they know how to give and take. There will be some fireworks between closed doors. They will, of course, fight for what is theirs, but ultimately they know that this is how the game is played. You have to come out with a level of consensus. Plus, there's now, in addition to that tradition, there is a sense that voters will really want to see wise government. So they have had enough of infighting being played out in the public arena, and parties therefore have an incentive to demonstrate that they are grown-ups and that they can negotiate and come out with consensus in the end. So I think VVD and D66 will ultimately find agreement. Your question about Renew, there is indeed an interesting development. They've been together in the Renew group for a very, very long time. I've always managed to stick it out together. What was one reason of the success of D66 this time is that party moved up to the center-right a little bit more, to where traditionally VVD is. So they took a little bit of that space of VVD, their electorate, their policies, and that VVD will not like. So they will seek to regain that territory. I suspect that will lead to some kind of tension between the two, because they can't be talking to the same voter at the same time, right? So within Renew, there will probably also be a little bit of tension around that, of who claims that center ground, where the especially center-right voter sits.
Thank you very much. And okay, so we understand the players, the actors of the potential coalitions, but coming to the topics and the policies, housing and migration were two of the most important topics of the campaign. But with these results, which is not exactly what was expected, with PVV not doing as well as the polls indicated, will these two topics, housing and migration, be the two most important ones in the coalition talks? And if not, what are the topics that D66 and Rob Yetten would like to put forward, and what are the main claims or main demands of the potential partners? Elizabeth, for instance, and Ria and Sam, you can intervene after a few.
I mean, perhaps picking up where Sam left it, because I think it is actually interesting if you look at let's say, the European dynamics of the collaboration between D66 and the VVD, is that actually we had a point in time when the VVD, so the Rutte's party, entered a coalition with his successor, together with indeed a far-right Freedom Party, that actually Valérie Hayer from the Renew Party here in the European Parliament in Brussels was very explicit. And they even held a vote here in Brussels in the Renew Party to see to what extent the VVD should be expelled. So I think that tells you something about the dynamics. And in a way, and that's the reason for bringing it up, I think it also brings us back to the topics that were leading in this campaign. I think on the one hand, you really saw that D66 was trying to have a sort of an Obama-esque campaign, which was very positive by nature. I mean, their logo translated basically to a "Yes, we can" slogan. And it really focused on topics like for example, housing, but also healthcare, green energy, but from a much more positive perspective. And I think also from the perspective that these past years, we have been seeing that voters have been alienated from their governments. I mean, very often they don't trust their governments anymore. They don't trust the fact that their governments are still delivering. And especially when it comes to these topics that matter for people, you know, when it comes to, let's say, waiting lists in the healthcare systems, or to what extent you can get your medicines, or to what extent you can get a house when you need it. I think D66 really approached these topics from a very positive perspective, whereas the others, I think, indeed tried to almost win the competition with Wilders when it came to migration. So being much more, I would say, toxic on migration, making this a problem. And I think in that respect, it was, as often has been said, not so much a left-right battle like we saw back in the days, but much more, let's say, on cultural issues. And I think D66 did very well to really stick their neck out and to sort of keep fighting Wilders on his more negative agenda. And I think also the fact that Wilders didn't really show up at debates, of course, helped, because it meant that D66 had the space to, you know, put forward the positive agenda. I think what was also really interesting, and also I think highly debated among some, is that D66 also tried to sort of claim nationalism in a more positive way, because we have been seeing over the years that populist movements also claim, you know, flags and nationalism as their home turf. But I think D66 tried to make the flag, again, a more positive symbol, where the Dutch could be proud again to be Dutch, and not seeing this as a symbol for populism per se. And I thought that was quite, again, some would say, well, I wouldn't agree that you would do it that way. But I think it was very interesting to see that time and again, the message was very positive.
Thanks. The comparison with Obama is interesting because, of course, the "Yes, we can" slogan, but as we understood with the three of you said, well, it's not a presidential system. It's not a leader imposing his views or his, you know, personal momentum. So what Rob Jeden can do, what can he do really, and who is he? I mean, does he have what it takes? Does he have experience to, you know, to lead the negotiations, to lead the government, to change the mindset of the country beyond the campaign and the election? So maybe Ria, if you want to go into that question.
Yeah, Rob Jeden is a really nice man. I've interviewed him several times, but that's not a key. He's also a very great talent. He was very young when he entered the parliament. I think he was only in his early 30s, maybe even his late 20s. Now he's still very young. So, and he has already been a party leader for quite some time. He has been a minister, and people were really, well, kind of in doubt whether he could do that. And he was a great minister, only for like 2 years, because we already mentioned the chaos in Dutch politics, but he really did great. He got a lot of approval from the municipalities, the local governments, but also businesses, other politicians. So that's what he can do, absolutely. He knows how to campaign, but he also knows how to govern, which is quite remarkable for such a young guy. He is also the first openly gay prime minister, probably he will be, in the Netherlands. He is going to be married to a man, a hockey player from Argentina, a national hockey player, so also quite a talent in another field. He's positive. I think he can give the country a new perspective on being not too negative, not too negative, because that's also what we saw with Rutte. Rutte also said that we were a really cool country, that we could be the coolest country in on the planet, that our businesses would be very innovative, etc. That's also his vibe. And I think he has the power and the charisma to really bring this message to the people, which is quite remarkable. But still, we really have to know. We really have to see whether he gets enough space to do what he wants to do. That's really the question. But I have to admit that his relationships with other politicians, like Dilan Yesegus from the VVD, the Liberals, and also other politicians, are really great. He knows how to do this personal to keep his personal relationships good, which could be really come in handy during the formation talks, which will start later this week.
Thank you. Sam or Elizabeth, would you have something to say about Rob Jetten and his views, his leadership style, and then we will go on, what he could do for the EU or with the EU? Sam first, if you want.
Okay. No, I concur with what was said. He has a good reputation, both as a politician and as a minister. I think that was his winning factor. He's demonstrated, even though he's young, that he's experienced, right? And so a lot of people outside the Netherlands say, well, is this a sign that the Netherlands wants change because he's so young? Well, no, he's actually one of the more experienced people. That's what made him win. He's demonstrated to be good at forming a stable or being in a stable government. So I think that's one winning factor. The other thing I'll say about him as prime minister, assuming that he will be, prime ministers, they last long in the Netherlands traditionally. Rutte lasted over a decade. His predecessor, Balkenende, also nearly a decade, and so on and so forth for all the previous ones. That's partly because once you become a prime minister, you get this bonus in the next election, as we call it, right? It creates a level of credibility and leadership bonus that you get as a party. So Jette, he's very young still, he's capable. We should give him some time to get used to the role of leading a country, leading a government. But we may also need to look beyond, right? Because that's the tradition. He may be there for longer than just his government if we go by the tradition of Dutch prime ministers.
And perhaps, Erik, if I may, because
yes,
I think
sure.
it's a very important element what Sam just brought up. And I think it is important also when it comes to the broader political landscape. And I think that comes to the question, is this going to be a turning point or not? I mean, if you look overall, so not just the Freedom Party, but overall at the number of, let's say, radical right votes that these parties got. So then we're speaking about Freedom Party, but also there's another party which is called Forum for Democracy. I think Ja21 to a certain extent also should be counted as a radical right party. And you can see that the number of people that voted for this party hasn't really shifted. So it means that sort of progressive politics and its bloc has been shrinking over the years. And I think what, in my opinion, Rob Jetten did very smartly is that he sort of built a much broader bloc by also becoming, slightly more, let's say, pragmatic on migration, shifting probably a bit more to the center than he otherwise would have done when it came to the spirit in his party. And I think that makes up for indeed sort of a center bloc that hopefully then also could last for longer if he manages indeed to compromise on issues, because indeed migration has been an issue, but certainly also the green agenda, where his party is quite progressive, where he showed that also he's willing to be more pragmatic, because certainly if he's going to govern with the Christian Democrats, for example, not to say with the VVD, the Liberals, he needs to be pragmatic and he needs to be able to compromise. And I think the fact that he showed that in the elections was very smart, because that, built already the sort of foundations for hopefully what will become a broader coalition that can last longer than the chaos we have seen these past months.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Now let's go to the EU. And I would like first to come back to the outgoing or current government, because it will stay in place until the new government is formed. So what can we say about the EU policies of the Schoof government? Because at first, in the first month, it included the PVV, Wilders PVV. Then since last summer, it's going on as a caretaker government without the PVV. But what were its positions on key issues like, of course, migration, but mostly defense, Ukraine, competitiveness, industrial policy, the upcoming EU budget negotiations? So what can we say about the Netherlands now on the EU stage, and then we'll go on what could change or not. So maybe Elizabeth, you want to start, and then Ria and Sam will be able to answer.
Well, I think it's quite interesting that at the start of the Schoof government, they had very bold promises. You know, they were going to get an opt-out on asylum. They would get an opt-out on nitrogen, which is very important also for sort of housing policies, etc. They would also get a decrease in the EU budget. And again, this was all put very boldly, and this would also be realized just in a few months' time. Well, guess what? Nothing happened. And in that respect, I think we can say that the Dutch influence in Brussels went down, because with Mark Rutte, we have been seeing that the Netherlands, as you know, a country which is sort of big enough to play with the bigger member states, but also small enough to get traction with smaller member states, was always quite able to position itself as powerful and influential. I think not in the least because, after all, in terms of economic terms, the Netherlands may not be very big, but it does well in terms of the Eurozone and economic growth. So it is an important country in that respect. And I think with Mark Rutte, it probably punched above its weight. And I think with Schoof, you can say that we underperformed and that the Netherlands lost credibility, because this whole sort of attitude like, oh, we will just go to Brussels and negotiate very quickly, showed that a lot of politicians didn't really know how Brussels worked. And then the fact that, of course, due to the chaos in the government, also there were a lot of personal changes. So only, I think, on migration, in just 1 year, we had 4 different ministers, which of course doesn't help if you want to have continuity and, you know, a certain ask that you go for time and again. So in that respect, I think it will be important to see that any politician that comes in, and again, it's very likely that Rob Jetten will be this new prime minister, that they will build more constructively where the Netherlands left it in the past. And I think the fact that Rob Jetten is connected to a political family, to Renew Europe, will of course help a lot, because the fact that Schoof didn't have a political affiliation, I've written that from the start, of course, wasn't helpful, because all these heads of state have their breakfast or their dinner sessions in advance of the European Council. And Schoof didn't have that naturally. And of course, Jetten has it. He has, you know, a family, and he has an infrastructure that he can fall back on. And I think that will help tremendously in of course, the months to come, which is so important with the multi-annual financial framework, but also Ukraine and in defense and security discussions. So I hope this is the starting point of something more positive and more influential for the Netherlands.
Thanks. Ria or Sam, how would you assess the Netherlands now after this 11-month plus caretaker government? Ria, maybe, since you've been following defense, what can you say about this?
Well, I think it's going to be a really hard task for Rob Jetten to be as progressive and as pro-European as he wants to be. Because if he is forced to govern with Ja21, with the other central right or radical right party that has no experience at all in public service, so that's also a great question mark. But okay, if he has to, if he is forced to govern with them, he cannot be as pro-European as he wants to be, because if you look at the programs, the election programs of all the parties, then D66 is well, the most pro-European. We already knew that, but I would have expected that the VVD would be more pro-European as well. Now that they have had this failed experiment with the parties that we saw the last couple of months, that are really not pro-European, like Elizabeth already told you. But no, in their programs, they are really skeptical again about the EU budget, which cannot be increased, about Eurobonds, about well, actually about everything, and also about foreign policy as itself. They have this tone of voice. They don't mention the woke word, but actually there are some words that could be going in that direction as well. They want to have budget cuts on embassies. They want to well, really cut extremely heavily in development aid. And we all know that it's not only important to invest in defense and security, but also in foreign policy, in embassies, in development aid, because, well, a continent as Africa is, they need to have a chance to develop itself, because otherwise there will be conflicts, there will be migration, there will be terrorist attacks, because, well, people are just being in despair. So they have to, if you don't have a choice, you choose, you make stupid choices like being a terrorist. So, and still, after 2 years of chaos, I don't think VVD gets that. And Ja 21 really doesn't get that. They speak about the foreign policy and other countries like they don't even exist, more or less. I mean, so then Rob Jetten is being forced to be much more skeptical than he wants to be. So that's really a question mark, in my opinion, now.
So if I simplify maybe what you say, and I will ask Sam what he thinks. I understand that nothing will change, or not much, on Netherlands' position on the main issues because of.
Well, nothing changes. No,
necessity.
it's going to be better than it was, because,
Yeah.
well, it couldn't be any worse, actually. But I don't think it's going to be a pro-European country again if Rob Jetten is being forced to govern with Ja 21 and VVD. For Europe, it's better that he will get a chance to choose Timmermans' party, who has this more, this broader perspective on the world, as the Christian Democrats as well do.
Thanks. Sam, what could be done to, because Elizabeth said the Netherlands were less influential because of the Prime Minister being alone on the EU stage, and the government not being very constructive. So what could or should be the main point of the next government to be a player in the EU? To have some influence on the key topics like defense, the EU budget, which is very important for the Netherlands as a fight. So how do you see that, Sam?
Well, I think we first have to dissect which are the issues that the Netherlands will want to fight for. A few have already been mentioned. I think the unfortunate news for the rest of Europe is the Netherlands will always be a frugal country. It's in our DNA. Whatever party you get leading the government, they will always try to give as little and get as much, right? We can discuss the extent to which, but frugality, I think, is also going to come from the next government. Market integration, this we heard Rob Jetten say, I think it was in a political interview, just after I think it was the election outcome, he held an interview where he said, further EU integration, basically the Draghi report, he wants to put his full weight behind, and he's going to find consensus within the coalition. And the same on Ukraine. I think there's no doubt that the Netherlands will continue to back Ukraine wholeheartedly. Where there may be some disagreement, and that's where the negotiations will come in, our climate. I think especially Rob Jetten, his party, but also he personally, as a former climate minister, he believes in things like the environment and protecting it, and having EU policies to put weight behind those ambitions, and that's where he'll clash, and that's where also it will matter who he will govern with. Will it be, as the other two speakers mentioned, Ja 21, the far right party, or Labour, Greens on the left side. That will make a big difference. And the same for development aid and, in fact, the whole external agenda of the EU. That will make a big difference. Who does he form a coalition with? I now forget your question, Eric.
No, my question was on, what could be the strong point of the government, but you more or less answered
Okay.
the question. Thank you. We have a first question from the audience, and actually it's a question I didn't ask you because I understood it was not an issue anymore, maybe, but it's still interesting. What happened to Frans Timmermans? And the question behind is, does it say anything about the lack of popularity of former Brussels heavyweight with the national Dutch electorate? Is it something relating to his campaign, to his alliance, the positions, the proposals of his alliance, or is it something to do with the fact that he was for a long time in Brussels and came back only recently, 2 years ago, I think, in the Netherlands? Why did this alliance between the Greens and PVDA fail? So I can ask you, Sam and Elizabeth.
Well, I think, had you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said he could still have become prime minister. The last 2 weeks really shifted a lot. There were at least 4 party leaders that during the campaigns to the chance of becoming the next prime minister, and the campaign changed a lot. So that was a big lesson, how a party runs its campaign, which debate on TV it participates in, what errors it makes during the campaign. We saw a few parties that made gross errors, strategic errors, or slips of the tongue. That changes things tremendously. It's what helped Rob Jetten being catapulted to become the next prime minister. He had some luck in being invited to a few debates and being on television on a popular TV quiz. And Timmermans, I think, he didn't run a bad campaign. He wasn't very convincing, I guess, the way others were. What also didn't help is that over the past 2 years, a lot of the other parties projected on him everything that the far right hates, his European profile being one, right? So he came in with sort of with a reputation that was difficult to brush off, was projected as far left, even though looking at his policies, he was probably more centrist than the far right made him out to be. But it made it very difficult for him to project himself as a centrist candidate the way Rob Jetten did. So it was how the others campaigned that made him look an extremist on the left, even though his policies were probably not.
And perhaps if I can add, Eric, because I think it's absolutely right what Sam said, but I think we also should not underestimate also the current dynamics of how campaigns are being held, also with online dynamics, because I'm a board member of the NGO Defend Democracy, and we had actually a tool to monitor what was happening online, which we called WebWatch. And in our WebWatch analysis, it really turned out that Timmermans was the #1 target when it came to online toxic reactions. I was just looking it up. 25% of the online reactions was targeted at Timmermans and was being toxic. So he was the #1 target when it came to this. And I think it confirms what Sam just illustrated, namely that he was being seen as elitist, and his sort of Brussels pro-European profile worked very much against him. And I think what was, of course, very sensitive is that the Green Left Labour Party is a new merger party. So what I had hoped for was sort of to come out in a positive mood, to come up with a broader sort of progressive alliance, and of course win at least a few votes. And the contrary happened, because they lost votes. And especially for this new sort of merger party, this was not, of course, what they hoped for. And I think Timmermans sort of concluded that he wasn't the right man at the right place. I mean, I personally was wondering, and also given the fact that indeed the Liberals, the VVD, has been campaigning so much against him, to what extent it makes it now perhaps a little bit easier, now that Timmermans has gone, to work with his successor, because at least then the VVD has a way out to say, like, well, we always targeted Timmermans, but now that he has left the stage, we can work with his successor. Again, this is a big if, because I agree with Ria earlier on that the VVD is the kingmaker. And if they're going to go for more responsible politics, I would say they should use this as an argument. But again, at this stage, it's a big if, and we need to see what kind of play they're going to play the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I guess
yes, and in addition, I really don't think that Mr. Timmermans had a great campaign. He didn't look very vibrant and very lively. It was quite yeah. In the debates, he didn't come out very good. He is quite old compared to the other contestants, which is not to do some ageism, but still you can see that he is not as vibrant as he used to be. And he lost his momentum when he came from Brussels to the Netherlands. You saw a lot of approval because he had this great international career. He had this green agenda, etc. And that was really hip in that time. I think in 2023, he almost won the elections because of this. And now in 2 years, he couldn't give a real a real boost to this campaign because of his maybe his health. He had his operations the last couple of months, but also he just looked and also don't forget that he was an executive in Brussels, that he really managed a lot of portfolios here in Brussels. But in the Netherlands, he had to campaign, and Dutch campaigns can be really, really tough. For you have to get used to quite some bad language sometimes, and he was not. He just he just wasn't into that game. He used to be a great debater, and when he came back, he was he was used to treated in a different way in Brussels, and it was really hard for him to adjust again to the Dutch situation. So actually, I think the Greens and the Labour Party, the merger party, made a huge mistake not to do what the VVD did. Both Dylan Jezegus of the VVD and Timmermans were really unpopular during the entire election campaign, and the VVD decided to to give other popular VVD persons the podium. They sent them to television shows. They sent Defense Minister Brekelmans to television shows. Also, Minister of Economics Karremans and Finance Minister Heijnen, who is also very popular. And what Greens and PvdA did, they just counted on Timmermans to improve himself, and I think they should have sent other prominent party members to the arena as well. They do have really great talents, and they were just invisible. So I think that was a huge mistake.
Mm-hmm. And now they will have to renew their leadership after the bad results. A party which will not renew its leadership is the PVV with Wilders. So we talked a bit with Sam about his not recognizing the results, but I would like to go further. And you all mentioned the fact that Jetten will have to, to take into account his other partners' positions on EU policies. But what about Wilders? How much will he put pressure on the next government on EU policies? How influential will he remain in the parliament or in the political landscape? So who wants to answer that? Is Wilders still, even if not in the government, even if not the winner of the election, is he still in a position to shape the Dutch politics, but also Dutch positions in the EU? Sam, maybe?
Well, I think Wilders has been a master at controlling the debate, even from the outside. Some people argue that for the past 20 years, all the Netherlands has been talking about has been the issues that Wilders has brought up. especially migration, but also issues like the role of the EU. And Wilders is the longest-serving member of parliament in the Dutch parliament. He's a mastodon that knows the tricks, knows how to dominate the debate from wherever he is, be it inside or outside government, and he will continue to do that. He won't have a direct formal influence on the government position. So that at least we know. But like any party does, as soon as the one election is over, they look at the next election. And especially in the Netherlands, where governments collapse quite soon, as some of the other speakers mentioned, all parties are forced to think about their next campaign and how to position themselves. And then the threat of Wilders will loom large. He lost a lot, but he's still the second largest party with only a marginal difference with the largest. And all, especially right of center parties, will try to profile themselves from within government, especially VVD, possibly Ja21, to make sure that however they govern will not be seen as them having given their credentials over to the left of center, right? They will want to demonstrate that they are solid right-wing parties that fight for the average folk. So all that is Wilders doing. His views, his electorate, his potential to win the next election will dominate the behavior of VVD and possibly Ja21 already in the upcoming negotiations. So yes, he will be there even if he's not at the table.
Thanks. And Elizabeth, Wilders his party is part of Patriots for Europe, the party of Viktor Orban, also the National Rally in France. And does he use and do you think he will use this membership at EU level to remain influential, both in the Netherlands and in the EU, to play a role in the European far right? What has he done so far? Because I think we see him as a domestic politician, but not really as a EU level politician. Is he active in the Patriots for Europe, and how would he continue to do that?
Well, I think you can see, and I think that proves that he is indeed a seasoned politician who is already in power since 2004. So he knows very well, how to deal with politics and how to also play with important players. And I think over the years, he has been nurturing his contacts with indeed far-right figures like Orban. I think, some people say the fact that his wife is Hungarian and he also travels there privately quite often plays perhaps a role. I think he has been also seen with the likes of Matteo Salvini in Italy. I think at some point he was traveling to the States and also showing his affiliation with Trump. So clearly he has been playing that playbook. And I think he may perhaps not be active in Brussels per se, but of course, the members of his parties are. And we have been seeing that the Patriots, together with other far-right parties, are playing their role and sort of trying to divide and conquer the parliament from within and weakening the EU from within. So I clearly see that Wilders will continue doing that. I think what we said before is that it's very important to know that he may have lost seats, but the far right parties per se haven't. And I think it's really crucial if we come back to the fact that if there's not going to go a government before Christmas, and I just saw a quote this morning from current Prime Minister Schoof, who expected that Santa Claus will be quicker than the government, meaning that it may well be that we only have a government after Christmas. And then basically the election campaign for the next local elections in May is about to start. And I think it will weaken mainstream parties if there's not yet a government. And then if Wilders get in election mode and he does better than now, because I think it's fair, as we said before, that he was quite subdued this time. He was perhaps not the firebrand that we used to see. He canceled a few, debates that he didn't participate in. So if indeed he's perhaps going on and does what he does best, which is being in opposition and just, thriving on problems rather than coming up with solutions that one needs to do if you're part of any government, I think it may well be that we see shift, and that worries me. So if people ask me, well, if this is a turning point, I think for a turning point, we would need to see that this is a trend that then gets consolidated, perhaps, hopefully in March. Because if it's not the case, and we're going back to Wilders, and I think that's also a question that I saw in the chat, then he still has an influential position in Dutch politics, even from the sidelines.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And yes, there was this question in the chat, but for the last 4 minutes, I will ask you the question just before this one, which is an interesting one. What is the political message that the Netherlands is sending to Europe and to the world? So if that would allow you to summarize your analysis. So I will start with Ria, then Sam, and closing word to Elizabeth. So Ria, what is the message according to you?
What we sense unconsciously is the fact that we are a really polarized country. That's, well, more or less 60% is pro-European, more or less progressive, wants to be part of Euro, etc. And the other part is not. The trust in politics is historically low, which is really concerning, and that's also why I agree with Elizabeth that this is not a turning point, because especially in the countryside, people they don't trust their governments anymore. Especially after the COVID crisis, people have this conspiracy theories, etc., and they feel neglected. So yeah, that remains worrisome, and migration has been a huge election topic already since 2004. Only during COVID and during the financial crisis, the Greek crisis, people were more concerned about economy than they were about migration. So no, the message is we're polarized, and well, hopefully this will change, but I don't see any change anytime soon. So sorry.
Well, you're not responsible. Sam, what is the message for you?
Well, what I hope is the message. I mean, the choice was for stable, old, centrist parties, right? Still a lot of voters that voted to far right, but the ones that came out as winners were stable parties that know how to run a government. And that was in response to a very chaotic period of having populist and startup parties, very new sort of experimental parties that emerged after a big scandal and came out in protest against that. So the return to stability, I think, is what a lot of citizens want. Citizens want governments to deliver, even more than delivering on exactly the things that they want. They want a government that does its homework and doesn't bother them too much. And if the Netherlands can demonstrate that, if the next coalition can stick around for the regular 4 years instead of collapsing in 1.5 or 2 years, can get a few of these bigger chunks of policies done over the finishing line, housing, climate issues, migration issues, I think that's par for the course. Then they will have done their homework and demonstrated that politics does deliver. We have a chance with this election outcome. They just have to demonstrate that in these negotiations, they will find a way to do it together.
Thanks. Elizabeth?
Well, I think I'm somewhere halfway probably, because I completely agree that, yes, I think Dutch politics has never been more polarized. I mean, 15 parties made it into parliament. I think we also should know that the biggest party has never been so small, because, the win that we're currently speaking of, 26 seats, is marginal compared to what parties used to have 10 years ago. Still, I think the fact that the mood now seems to be shifted, and that compared to the previous elections, at least there is indeed a party with a positive agenda, a mainstream party that's able to govern, is also coming out as a winner. I think that is hopefully a positive signal. But I think we should be avoiding the Polish effect, that people initially were very, very positive and hopeful because the wind of change in Poland, and then a few months later they were utterly deceived because of the fact that the new government didn't deliver. So yeah, let's hope positively. Let's say, personally, I hope that this will really come into fruition, but let's not do it too early, because that will also mean that people get cynical again. And I think that's then also leading to voters' reactions.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the three of you. I think it was a very interesting discussion. Thanks to the people who followed us and asked questions, and I wish you a good end of afternoon, a good week, and see you for other EPC events. Goodbye.